Alright, back again, and before I start the review, just like to preface, this is going to be the last G.I. Joe review for a while, mostly because I'm kind of burnt out and I got a huge backlog. And so let's just now start the review after I got that out of the way. I picked this also up from the public library. It's G.I. Joe Special Missions Volume 1 from Devil's Due Comics, like most of the stuff I got so far. This is a pretty big list of writers who wrote and drew for this book. This includes B. Clay Moore, Jeremy Hahn, Michael Sullivan, Tim Seeley, Robbie Roddy, Mike Bair, Andrew Dabb, and Joe Dad. And they have a short story, and the short stories include some of the same people. I'm going to list them all anyway. Scene Dove, Michael Sullivan, Sam Wells, Stefano Caselli, I hope I pronounced that right, Russ Laurie, and Daniel Rudani. Alright, Special Missions is a series of story showcase that kind of is more about the more lesser known Joes. And some of these Joes include Airtight, Barrel Row, Budo, Beachhead, Clutch, Covergirl, Frostbite, Iceberg, Jinx, Lowlight, Mercer, Recondo, Sparks, Torpedo, and Wetsuit. And normally, how this book works is they'll have a full-length story followed by a short story, and normally the short story is normally standalone, but I'll get to that to the end. The ending's a little bit different with the format. And I'm going to do a play-by-play of each story and not try to spoil anything, just give you a brief rundown, as brief as possible, and see if I liked it or not. And then I'll give an overall opinion about the book. The first feature-length story is a small group of Joes who are essentially reserve members who are put on a mission to capture deadly nerd toxin before it's unleashed on the population. It's pretty standard. There's a little bit of comedy. Ain't that special. The art is also not really that special, but it ain't too bad. It kind of shows you these different Joes working together, which I thought was kind of neat. Next story, Brother's Keeper, which is much more personal story, but it's pretty short. The artwork is pretty decent, and the writing, and it really uses the short story format really well, and it's really well paced. He does a good job pacing the story. It's about two brothers. One's a Joe, one's a member of Cobra, and it's sort of like, it doesn't go heavy into a relationship, but it's sort of touched upon really well. What they do go in is done really well, and it's a good job of trying to want you to learn more about these two characters, like most of these. Next story is about Jinx, and she's pretty much trying to stop a military coup of the Japanese government that pretty much involves her lover, Budo. Jinx is like a protege character connected to Snake Eyes. She's a ninja. That's her on the cover right there in the middle. And it's a pretty fun story. Good bit of action. And they kind of have the more, I want to say, cowboyish Joes like Clutch, Rock and Roll, Wild Bill, and Gung Ho, who are pretty much, this is supposed to be like a subtlety mission, and judging, as you can probably tell by the names, they're pretty much not built for stealth. But I really like this one. Had pretty good art too. Next short story, Juliet, is about Sparks investigating a death of another Joe. It goes in really good detail about their relationship and gives you a lot of information on this Joe who supposedly died. It's really heavily tied into a storyline. Actually, I noticed most of the short stories are actually heavily tied to a storyline that was going on at the time. And there's not really a lot of length stories do it, other than the last one, which I'll get to next. Um, it's a good character piece, but it's not the most complex one. And art is fine and does its job, but it's pretty good. I liked it. Now, the last full-length story is set in Antarctica and has Duke, Scarlet, and Snake Eyes teaming up with three Joes who specialize in Arctic combat: Frostbite, Iceberg, and Snowjob. This one's much more heavily connected to a storyline that was going on at the time. But that shouldn't interfere with the story much. This has a very good bit of comedy bits, mostly because it has Snowjob teaming up with Snake Eyes for a good bit of the mission. And a lot of the comedy also comes from the fact that the Arctic Joes pretty much prefer Arctic weather only, and they hate anything warm. So it was a good story, and it actually, unlike the other short stories you normally are not really tied to the full-length stories, this one kind of actually is. And in there, basically, the Joes are infiltrating a private hospital that's secretly being used for Cobra. And in there, they discover someone who is, I'm guessing, is very important to Cobra. And basically, this is much more heavily involved than even the last story to the current storyline. Actually, I think this is supposed to lead up to another storyline in the main Joe book at the time. And actually, I didn't realize this because there's these bio pages in the back where it kind of gives you a rundown on all the Joes and Cobra members, which is really useful, especially if you don't have a prior history and you don't feel like looking it up on Wikipedia or something. I was surprised that there's actually a final short story, but it's pretty much just a bonus comedy short story about the pets of G.I. Joe. And the story itself is aptly named Pets. It's a goofy, fun story. It's reflected in artwork. It's pretty alright. It's not really nothing really special. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book. This was a good introduction to G.I. Joe, and especially the lesser known Joes, and gives a good rundown, especially with the bio pages. Comes in handy. The storylines do a good job in showing all their specialty. Sometimes when you have a larger cast of lesser known Joes, a lot of them don't get a chance to shine as much, but it's pretty good. I will say though, you might want to read the main Joe book before you read this. So, if that's everything. Hope maybe one day I'll come up with more G.I. Joe reviews. All depends on if I get that itch again. And thank you for watching. Bye.